Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 15th of November, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing the last couple of days, everyone. I have been sick. You can probably hear it in my voice, to be honest. I'm still not totally better, but I figured it had been way too long since a refuel. 4 days, obviously because of the weekend, and then the last 2 days, being Monday and Tuesday. And there is a lot to get through. A lot has been happening, especially with Dev Connect currently on and the side events and all that sorts of stuff there. You know, Vitalik's brought back Plasma, apparently. You know, so much stuff to get through, basically. But I will say that, just a reminder here, that next week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there will also be no refuels because I will be at the Crypto Assembly event in Sydney. Now, I guess, mention this a couple of weeks ago, but just wanted to remind you guys that, yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week, there will be no refuels, and I'll be back the following Monday in order to produce a longer episode to cover all the news from there. But I'm definitely very much looking forward to going to the event. Always love the in-person events. Hope to see some of you there if you're going to be attending it. As I said, it's called Crypto Assembly. You can just Google that, and it should come up with the right result there. But yeah, I believe the actual events on the Thursday and Friday. I'm just going on the Wednesday, obviously, to fly up there and get checked in and all that sorts of stuff there. And I'm also at a different event on the Wednesday, actually, on a panel with Mehdi from Sigma Prime at 4 p.m. So yeah, but that's a different event to the Crypto Assembly one there. But anyway, enough on that. Let's jump into the news. Now, of course, we have some news around the ETFs. Now, I covered this last week, how Blackrock obviously filed for a spot ETH ETF, and it was funny, I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was a fake filing made for an XRP ETH ETF in Blackrock's name, and as I said, like, it ended up being fake, and it was just crazy, because I went on Twitter, and I woke up to this. I woke up to the news, and then to the news of it happening, and then the news of it obviously being fake, and reading through all the tweets, you know, in kind of like the past tense was quite funny, especially seeing all like the XRP army people just getting in there and basically saying, you know, how do you know it's fake? This is the exact same way that the ETH one was filed, blah, 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 to like all the ETF analysts that I usually talk about on here. And it was funny seeing the ETF analysts get their exposure to the resident cult of crypto, which is the XRP army, right? But regardless of that, yeah, that was fake. But obviously the spot ETH ETF filing from BlackRock was very real, and we had a few tweets here. So Scott Johnson, who has been tweeting a fair bit about the ETFs lately, tweeted something about the analysis here for the filing, and then Jake Shavinsky quote tweeted this and said, "I took Scott's advice and read BlackRock's argument for approval of a spot ETH ETF. It's very compelling. The argument flows from Grayscale's DC circuit victory. The SEC can't lawfully approve ETH futures ETFs, but not a spot ETH ETF." And obviously Jake agrees with this. And I remember saying to you guys that the futures ETFs basically paved the way for ETH getting a spot ETF, because especially in the face of the Grayscale kind of lawsuit win in court there, because as Jake says here, it basically means that the SEC would be breaking the law, or breaking kind of precedent that was set in a court, if they were to approve the ETH futures ETFs, but not the spot ETFs. So yeah, I feel like the spot ETH ETFs are coming, you know, shortly after the BTC ones. I don't know when the BTC ones are actually going to be approved. Like, I remember I speculated last week that it could happen like this week or the week after. But as I've said before, like, the deadline is January 10th, really, and the ETF analysts I follow still think it's a pretty much not 100% chance, but they say like 90% chance it's approved by then. But you have other things in between then, obviously, like the holiday period and a potential government shutdown on like the 18th of this month or something like that. So a few days away now. Lots of moving parts here, but regardless, the ETFs are still coming, guys. Like, I don't think any of them are going to get denied here. I don't even think the ETH ones are going to get denied at this point in time. But there is a long comment period on the ETH ones that only started, I think, a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago with the other spot ETH ETF filings that were put forward. But I think that the comment period is up to 240 days or something. It's quite a lengthy comment period. So we're not going to be seeing any kind of movement on the ETH ones, at least until probably, I'm going to have to say Q1 at the earliest next year, right? But yeah, that's the kind of latest here on the ETF stuff. It's pretty much a, I guess, guarantee that the ETH ones would be approved, given that the futures have been approved, but timelines is very rough right now. It's not easy to pinpoint a timeline like it is for the Bitcoin ones, because obviously we have the dates there and the deadlines are fast approaching. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on all of that as things progress there. All right, so on to some ETH-related news. So, well, I guess like ETH development-related news. So I came across this tweet thread today from Lemonade on Twitter, where they've created something called the EIC, or ETH Investors Club, quarterly report. Now, from my reading here, this report basically aims to essentially cover all of the most exciting stuff happening in the Ethereum ecosystem each quarter and put numbers at it, basically. So it features things like, triple halvening, ultrasound money, triple point asset, all those sorts of things. But it also features not just things about ETH the asset, but obviously things within Ethereum, like the layer 2 ecosystem, DeFi, NFTs, all that good stuff there. I think the audience of this report is definitely the people that are not really as plugged into crypto as we are. Like I'll be honest, probably the audience for this report is not the Refuel watchers and listeners, because you guys get this information like straight away, straight from basically the source here. But in terms of getting the information out there into new audiences, I like seeing reports like this. I think it's still coming soon here. I don't think there is a report yet. You can go follow the Twitter account and everything. But essentially, from my read on here, what this aims to be is basically a way to, if someone is interested in ETH or Ethereum, and you want to explain to them exactly what the investment case is, why you're so excited about it, what's going on in the ecosystem, what's happening with scalability, because that's obviously going to be a topic of conversation a lot of the time when talking about just blockchains generally, then I imagine this report would be something that you'd be able to send to them there. And the reason I bring up this one in particular is because Lemonade here, I know from way back, they were actually part of the early index co-op group when I launched that with SEP Protocol back in the day, and they've been around for quite a while now, and I do trust this is going to be something really exciting. So I'll keep you guys updated on what this looks like. I'm going to assume it's going to be a paid thing as well. I don't think this is going to be free, especially because the amount of work that's going to go into this is probably going to be a lot of work, and obviously they want to get paid for their work here, which is totally fine, but we'll see what happens there. Maybe I'll reach out and see if we can get any discounts for Daily Gwei kind of members and things like that, but we'll see. I mean, as I said, there's not that much information out right now, but just figured it was worth highlighting, and you can go follow the actual Twitter account here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, I came across this Twitter thread today from Chainbound, where they've launched a new Grafana dashboard that tracks the full nodes of the Ethereum network. Now, keep in mind, this dashboard is not open source, so I'm not sure exactly how they're actually getting the map coverage here, because as you can see on my screen, there's a map of basically the world here and where all the full nodes are located. I'm sure they're using the same techniques that everyone else uses, like crawling the network, just looking for publicly accessible and seeable viewable nodes, stuff like that. But they've gone the extra mile in terms of like mapping this stuff out globally, but also it's accurate to within 11 kilometers, I think they're saying as well here. And they also track active nodes versus total nodes seen. So as you can see here, currently they see 10,900 active nodes, whereas the total nodes that they've seen over time is 23,400. Now, total nodes seen, I mean, there is a number of different reasons why this number, these numbers are different here, but I think that obviously the most relevant number is active nodes. So 10,900 active Ethereum full nodes, not necessarily with validators attached to them. So anyone can run a full node for free and you don't have to attach validators to them. But as you can see on the map here, it is heavily concentrated in the places you think it is, right? Like in the United States and Europe, very heavy concentration, especially in Western Europe here, and actually pretty heavy concentration more towards the kind of like eastern side of the US, but it's still good representation all over. And then you can go over here and see where it's actually we don't have much representation. We have a bit in South America. In Africa, there's basically not much at all, to be honest, right? You can actually see here that there's some here and there, but not really. Same with the Middle East, not too much happening there. I mean, there's a presence in Turkey, I guess that makes sense, and also in Israel. Tel Aviv is actually a crypto hub. There's a lot of teams out of there, like Starkware, for example, and then we can just keep going over the map, and you can see just like the sparseness of it over, as I said, like the Middle East and stuff like that. China, there's a bit happening. Taiwan, actually, there's a fair bit happening in South Korea, which is nice to see as well. Japan, and then going to my home country here in Australia, we're not really batting above our average here. There's some few and far between, but yeah, it's obviously heavily concentrated within the US and Europe right now, which I think is okay, because obviously the US and Europe are huge. The US is 400 million plus people, right? And it's as big as Australia is landmass wise. Europe is not just kind of one monolithic entity. There's many different countries within Europe and many different jurisdictions, obviously very concentrated in Western Europe here, but you can kind of see that it maps with who, I guess, like you see within the ecosystem, right? Like if I was to go on crypto Twitter, it would map exactly with like the prevalence on crypto Twitter of where people come from, basically. So yeah, but anyway, just cool to get a new tool that tracks this sorts of stuff and to see what it looks like globally. And yeah, I mean, having over 10,000 nodes is great. Hopefully we can see the number trickle up over time, because at the end of the day, it doesn't cost much to run an Ethereum full node, and it can be run on very low powered hardware, and you're doing your kind of bit to keep the network decentralized, you know, check the chain yourself, be able to use your own full node as an RPC to become a fully self-sovereign Ethereum citizen. All the good stuff there. But yeah, I'll link this website in the YouTube description below for you to check out for yourself. All right, some fresh research about Ethereum's, I guess, like censorship resistance generally, or I guess like this post in particular looks at the costs of censorship and models and simulates an approach to inclusion list. Now, I have discussed inclusion list before. It's one of the research kind of pieces and designs to basically eradicate as much censorship on the Ethereum network as possible. But what this research does mainly is focus on the costs, so the actual direct costs of censoring. And as you can see here from this chart, you can see that it actually costs, I believe, 30%. There's a 30% loss to builders who don't include censored transactions in their blocks here. So, like, don't include like transactions for like Tornado Cash and stuff like that in their blocks here. So, being an honest, non-censoring validator or block builder is always more profitable than being censoring. Now, I think that is obviously obvious. Like, I don't think that's something that is up for debate, so to speak, but we do have hard kind of evidence to point to this now. But the whole point of inclusion lists is basically forcing the validators or forcing the builders to include these things. Now, obviously, when you can't solve stuff with economics, which it doesn't seem that we've been able to solve this with economics, because even though it is more profitable to include those transactions, we still have plenty of the ecosystem not including them. So you have to solve it with kind of like network design, which is what we're trying to do with inclusion lists and other network designs out there. But you can go check out all of these things for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I just thought it was a great analysis kind of showing what it looks like and how really, I mean, the censorship on the network is generally concentrated within just the Tornado Cash stuff right now. But let's just say, I've brought up this example before, OFAC was to sanction something else that was more profitable. Maybe they were to sanction some DEX out there, maybe not Uniswap, maybe a smaller decentralized exchange. That would definitely hurt the profitability of builders, of block builders and validators that we're choosing to censor. So it really becomes a game of, how much profit do you want to leave on the table from the economic incentive perspective? But then with inclusion lists and with the designs that I've seen, we stop this in its tracks and basically give the power back to the validators, because of the way that it's designed. But then we still have the problem of validators being able to potentially censor, and that's where other solutions come in, like the shutterized beacon chain, which is basically doing encrypted mempools, which essentially what that would mean is that you wouldn't be able to see what the contents of the transaction were until it was actually included in a block. So you wouldn't be able to see it while it was in the mempool until it was actually included in a block or included in a bundle that gets included in a block, which would basically eliminate censorship altogether, because if you can't see what's going in, you can't censor it. At least that's my understanding of it. But it may end up being different. We may never end up implementing that. It just depends, right? There's multiple different things being worked on, so we'll have to see how that all kind of shakes out there. But you can check out this new research. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And there was another bit of research here as well from Mike Nuda and friends, talking all about MEV-burn and clearing up some of the misconceptions that have to do with MEV-burn, because MEV-burn has been something that's been in the works for a while now. As I said, it's not really close to network inclusion yet, maybe 2025 if it gets accepted by the community, but there has been pushback on it for various different reasons. But you should definitely go give this post a read, because it addresses a lot of that pushback. It addresses a lot of the pushback around it not being necessary, or misconceptions around what the actual goal of it is, so on and so forth. And there's a bunch of discussions that are had in the post itself as well, which are really, really, really interesting. So you should definitely go check it out. If you haven't yet, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Eigenlayer announced another partnership over the weekend. So they are partnering up with Near Protocol, which is funny because I announced, I mentioned last week that Polygon was teaming up with Near Protocol, which is another, obviously, layer one. But now they're teaming up with Eigenlayer to basically, I believe what they want to do is create a bridge between Eigenlayer and Near here in order to offer kind of like cross communication between the different L2s and use Near as like a data availability layer and stuff like that. We'll see how that kind of shakes out there and what that actually looks like, because as I said before to you guys, data availability is a commodity at this point. It is so commoditized right now. Like, I'll just rattle off the top of my head. You have Near now jumping into the ring with data availability. You have Avail. You have Celestia. You have EigenDA. You have ZK Porter. You have Ethereum DA as it exists today. Then you have Ethereum 4844. Then you have Ethereum full dank sharding, right? And then I'm already up to 6 or 7 solutions here. It's already become a commodity, because when you have that many solutions, what do you think happens to the costs, right? It's basically a race to zero. The costs, you can't charge that much, because then the data can just be posted somewhere else. So, okay, well then why would a Validium, for example, choose to store their data on you? Is it because you're cheapest, or is it because you're the most secure, or is it because you've given them some nice incentive to do it? And then it just falls back to basically how these teams do business development and what other kind of incentives they put on top and how secure their thing is. But I have argued before that obviously the gold standard of data availability is Ethereum layer 1, post 4844 and post full dank sharding, of course, but it's more costly, obviously. But then beyond that, I would say that it's not live yet for the public, but EigenDA would be probably the next best thing, because it uses restaked ETH, right? It's not using its own token. It's using the similar node operators to what Ethereum uses. That's not to say that it's equal to Ethereum security, far from it. But if you're looking to rank these things in terms of their security properties, I would say it would go Ethereum, layer 1, EigenDA, and then after that, I don't know what the ordering would be from there, right? Celestia is interesting from a tech perspective because they have data availability sampling, and which is part of the full dank sharding roadmap, things like that. But generally, when I kind of go down the list here, it's hard to rank outside of the top 2 there. But at the same time, right, as I said, EigenDA isn't live yet. There could be other security holes to it. It could be like very, very centralized at the start. There's different considerations here, but it's obvious that the gold standard of data availability is Ethereum layer 1. And then I think there's no argument to be had there. I don't think anyone would argue against that. But in return for that gold standard, you have to pay, right? It's not cheap to do this. And now the other stuff that Eigenlayer is working with Near Protocol on is this cross rollup transactions that are cheaper and faster. Now, I think this plays into the data availability stuff, but generally when it comes to cross rollup transactions or composability and interoperability between rollups, I see this narrative a lot on Twitter about how this is like a deal breaker for Ethereum's rollup-centric roadmap, or a deal breaker for L2s. Like, I feel like these people don't actually talk to the users of layer 2s, and they also don't understand that it's not a deal breaker because it's just an engineering problem that will get solved, right? It's not like we don't know how to solve these things. We've already solved them to an extent with bridges. Like, I talk to users all day, every day, right? Like, well, maybe not all day, but I talk to users every day about this, layer 2 users. Not once have they ever complained to me about lack of composability or lack of interoperability or having to bridge, anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong, that's because they're crypto native users. They're probably more tolerant to these sorts of things and they probably don't mind as much. But when it comes to, obviously, the rest of the users of the planet, like when it comes to mass adoption, it becomes a different calculus there. But I've actually got a tweet that I want to talk about in a little bit, which covers that point. So I'm not gonna talk about it now. But yeah, cool. I guess still cool to see Near kind of trying to add more value to Ethereum here. For those of you who don't know, Near's been around for quite a while as a layer 1. I do think that even though they're a layer 1 and they said they're going to stay a layer 1, they can still add value to Ethereum, right? Like, not every layer 1 is created equal. Like, a lot of them are hostile to Ethereum, of course, and I wouldn't say that Near wasn't trying to compete with Ethereum to an extent. But if their latest kind of thing is to work with the Ethereum, I guess, like layer 2 teams and restaking teams like Eigenlayer to basically bring value to Ethereum while also trying to obviously bring value to their own protocol, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that, because then they're just competing in the free market, really, right? And as I said, when it comes to data availability, it's a race to the bottom. It's a commodity. in terms of rankings, I gave my rankings of like security because I think it all comes down to that in the end, right? If it's a commodity, then you will go for the thing that has the most security, and you'll do like a cost benefit analysis as well, because cost does play a part in it, but at the same time, you're paying for the block space. Now, if you are getting quality block space, but it's costing you a bit more than block space that is less secure and less quality, then you're going to pay that bit more to get the quality, right? It's like anything in life, really. I mean, you can go buy a $20 pair of shoes from some super chain, right? Because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to use these shoes for a bit. It's okay if they break because they're only $20. I'll replace them. But then you go buy more expensive shoes and they last longer. And there's actually kind of a cost benefit analysis done on this, where essentially that the person who buys the $20 pair of shoes actually ends up spending more in the long run because those shoes don't last as long and they have to keep buying it, right? Whereas the person who puts up front, maybe $200 for a pair of shoes, it lasts a lot longer, and they actually end up better off. But of course, it comes down to what you can afford at the time, right? There's a reason why people prefer to buy $20 shoes at that point in time rather than $200 pairs of shoes, right? There's a different analysis there. So I think the same is true for block space and for data availability. So it really depends on the roll-up, I guess it depends on the layer too. It depends on the project, and depends where they want to settle their data to. And the funny thing is that you could technically settle your data to multiple data availability networks, and you could also give users to store the data themselves while also telling them, hey, the data will be stored here for a little bit, but if you want it permanently, you can store it yourself. And that's also another consideration as well, is like the permanence of the data, which is a whole nother discussion. And I'm not going to go on about that too much because I just realized I'm already kind of 20 minutes in and I've got a bunch of stuff to get through. So yeah, you can go check out this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, ETH from EtherFi is now live on mainnet. So their first set of whitelisted users have been notified and are able to mint ETH. EtherFi will continue to whitelist more users to mint over the upcoming days. You will be notified via email when you have been approved. The whitelist applies to ether.fan as well. So you are only able to mint a fan or unwrap into ETH if you're on the whitelist. Now, this is, for those of you who don't know, this is a new LST. ETH run by EtherFi here. You can go check out their website to get more details on this. And I don't know if you can still sign up for the waitlist. I can't remember actually. I think I did highlight the waitlist on the refuel once upon a time, but I don't know if you can still sign up here. But if you can, it'll be on the website, of course. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that that's now live on mainnet, and they are inviting people that were whitelisted to mint their ETH here. All right, so I did mention earlier in the episode that Vitalik has apparently revived Plasma. Now, for those of you who don't know what Plasma is a funny thing. It was one of the original scaling solutions for Ethereum that basically came about after state channels. So in terms of like layer 2 scaling, I would say the start of it was Lightning Network, which was state channels, right? Which were an implementation of state channels, which came over to Ethereum as state channels. I remember Emise Go was trying to do it. Raiden, I don't know how to say that word. I don't know how to pronounce that word, sorry. Network was doing it, and there was a couple of other things out there. Then Plasma came along, and everyone pivoted to Plasma, and everyone was trying to do Plasma. But then there were a lot of flaws within Plasma, and it didn't really do what we wanted it to do, which was basically have an EVM on the Plasma chain, and there were like weird exit games and stuff like that. That wouldn't really work with what we wanted to do. And then, of course, out of Plasma came rollups as we know them today. Optimism, or OP Labs, which was originally Plasma Group. So they were working on Plasma, then they changed themselves into a group focused on optimistic rollups, and they are where they are today here. Now, the reason why Vitalik has brought back Plasma, or at least kind of posted about Plasma and said, what can it be used for, is because he thinks it can be used for a way to improve the security and general reliability of validium. So just a refresher here, a validium is something that stores its data off-chain or posting its proof on-chain. So it's not a full roll-up, but it's like a hybrid, where essentially if the data is lost because it's not stored on Ethereum layer 1, it's stored somewhere else, the funds are frozen instead of stolen. So your funds can't be stolen, but they can be frozen if the data is lost here. And what Vitalik does in his blog post is basically says that the exit game that was used within Plasma could actually potentially be used within validiums, specifically ZK validiums, in order to improve their overall security and robustness and generally stuff from there. Now, You can check out this post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. I haven't had time to digest it enough to actually understand exactly what's going on here, because it is quite technical, and also it hasn't kind of been out there long enough for people to kind of, I guess, give their takes on it and see if this would actually work. You know, Vitalik's awesome, very smart, has a lot of great ideas, but I never like taking any one person's ideas as like gospel or as like a good idea until I see other people talking about it, until I see other people kind of trying to break the idea, so to speak. And this has actually happened before with, I think, one or two of Vitalik's ideas in the past, where he was like completely wrong on something, I believe, or at least he came up with a way to do something that was just like suboptimal, and people basically said, you know, how about we do it this way? And he basically pivoted to doing it that way and abandoned his old research. And that's actually a pretty good quality of Vitalik, if I must say, that he's able to do that. But anyway, you can go give this blog post a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, it's kind of funny that we're talking about Plasma in 2023, because for those of you who weren't around back in 2017, 2018, some little bit of 2019, it was all the rage. Like, it was the way Ethereum was going to scale, but there were so many holes in it, and there were so many offshoots of Plasma. I think I ended up reading there were like 8 different offshoots of Plasma. I think the most popular one was something called Plasma Cash, but because there were so many limitations to it, because there were so many holes in it, we ended up pivoting obviously to optimistic rollups, and now we have ZK rollups as well, and ZK EVMs. So, but Vitalik's basically proposing, okay, well, there's this thing called validiums, which is like a hybrid approach. Why not use the Plasma exit game design for things like ZK validium? So yeah, you can go check out this post to get more details on that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so another team or another project, or I guess like another entity, has joined the Polygon family here. So it was announced yesterday that OKX, one of the top centralized exchanges, is building their own layer 2 on Ethereum using Polygon's CDK called X1. So they say here, X1 will be a secure, highly performant platform for building dApps with gas fees paid in the OKB token. With X1, OKX users will be able to tap into Ethereum and soon other CDK chain liquidity, while Ethereum devs will have a decentralized protocol for building primitives previously unfeasible on OKX, from DeFi to social and everything in between. So obviously OKX is not the first centralized exchange to launch their own chain. Binance did it, Coinbase has done it with Base, and now with OKX doing it, and Kraken, there's rumors Kraken's going to do it as well. Remember I covered that last week. And now OKX is doing it as not a full rollup, they're doing it as a ZK Validium with Polygon's technology. So they're going to be storing their data off-chain somewhere. Not sure where they're going to be storing their data right now, whether it's going to be on one of the existing data availability networks or they're just going to be storing the data themselves. Who knows, right? I expect the OKX L2 generally to be pretty centralized though, just because it is a exchange, it is a centralized exchange L2. It's going to be centralized from the get-go. I mean, they all are, but it's going to be interesting to see how it decentralizes over time and how it actually interplays with the rest of the Polygon ecosystem. Because as you guys know, Polygon is building a super chain very similar to what Optimism is doing with their OP stack technology, where essentially everything can interoperate and become composable, and bridging is very seamless and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I think Polygon and Optimism are basically neck and neck right now with how many teams and how many projects they've onboarded to launch their own L2s here, but just really, really exciting to see this, because as I said, OKX is one of the biggest centralized exchanges out there, especially, I guess, outside of the US, because obviously Coinbase dominates in the US there, but great to see another kind of big entity getting involved with building a layer 2 on Ethereum, and congrats to Polygon on the big win here. All right, so speaking of Optimism, they have completed their Canyon hard fork on testnets. It went off without a hitch, so everything went through smoothly. And you can see here they completed it with their partners Conduit and Base, of course, for supporting them in this upgrade here. But I don't know when the mainnet's going to be. I think maybe mainnet will be in the new year. I don't know if they're going to do it over the holiday period. But as I said, this hard fork included support for things like the recent Chappella upgrade and things that went with that, and a bunch of other things. I think I highlighted this last week, actually, so I'm not going to rehash it now, but just wanted to note that, yeah, the hard fork activated on testnets went smoothly, which bodes very well for the fact that we obviously want to get this on mainnet as soon as possible. All right, Risk Zero has come out with a new proof of concept here. We're sharing their showcasing their latest ZK tech, something called Bonsai Pay, an open source ZK powered payments platform that enables users to send crypto to any Google account using Ethereum. Now they have a demo here at pay.demos.bonsai.xyz, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But basically, they say here, Bonsai Pay significantly improves the crypto payment experience by replacing complicated wallet addresses with a user-friendly email. Any Google account is compatible with the service and requires zero additional setup to receive funds. Users send their crypto to an email address using an escrow contract on Ethereum. Recipients can then retrieve the funds by logging into Google and generating a ZK proof. Under the hood, they're using JWT and OIDC verification on top of the Risk Zero ZK VM. All logic is coded in Rust and easily upgradable and extensible across other login providers and identity services. Bonsai Pay is currently deployed as a demo on Sepolia, so it's not on mainnet just yet, but this is what I've been talking about in terms of like this concept of ZK co-processing or ZK proving generally, where the computation is done like off-chain in a centralized way, but it doesn't matter because the proof is posted on-chain and you know, without needing to know what happened off-chain, that you're not going to get rugged or something fishy isn't going on. You know that that Risk Zero in this case is following the rules that they've set forth here. And you also get to do things like this where essentially you have like a trustless escrow with a Google account. Like that's actually insane to me that we're already at that point because payments, as I've said before, is dominated by Tron right now, but it's only dominated by Tron to the extent that the way we do payments today, where people use a MetaMask wallet or a Tron wallet, and basically to have USDC and USDT, I should say, sorry, Tether in there, and then just send a normal transaction. They're not using ZK tech. They're not even using layer 2s because they're using Tron, right? And they obviously originally were doing it for the cheaper fees, but right now the fees are not as cheap as they once were. But if we want to upgrade the payments experience and take it to the next level, it's so much more than, you know, cheaper and faster. It's doing stuff like this, right? It's integrating this tech, the ZK tech that we have, and basically making the payments experience as seamless as possible and as trustless as possible without having to get the users to jump through a million different hoops. So this is very cool. You can go check the demo out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Taiko has introduced something called the Based Booster Rollup, or BBR, which is a new major milestone in Taiko's roadmap. As they say here, we've been developing the BBR design for the past few months. Now I want to share what it is, how it works, etc., etc. So basically, what the BBR design does is combines two important pieces of Ethereum scaling: based sequencing and boosting. Based rollups inherit the L1 decentralization, security, and liveness because they use the Ethereum L1 validator set in order to sequence the transactions, and they're arguably the most effective, decentralized, and Ethereum aligned way of running a rollup. And then they asked the question, what if you could amplify the benefits of a based rollup by adding out-of-the-box native Ethereum L1 dApp scaling to it? And that's exactly what booster rollups offer. Imagine deploying your dApp once and having it scaled automatically across all L2s. If extra block space is needed, more booster rollups can be added without any additional setup work. In simple terms, booster rollups work similarly but to adding extra CPUs, SSDs to your laptop. They make your computer more powerful, allowing apps to work faster and grow bigger. For more technical folks, booster rollups shard the execution of transactions and the storage. So, I mean, this thread goes on for a little while, so you can read it to get a good idea of what's going on here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but there's actually a nice little kind of chart here showing this. You can see here Ethereum L1 at the top, and then booster rollups kind of feeding into that, and you can deploy your dApp on L1 and then execute all the transactions on L2 using kind of the based rollup design, which honestly I think is going to be one of the winning designs, if not the winning design, when it comes to rollups. Because if you can sequence your rollups using Ethereum L1 and getting the benefits of obviously the decentralization and security and censorship resistance of Ethereum L1, then you're definitely going to want to do that. But at the same time, it kind of changes the calculus on value capture. Like as a rollup, how are you capturing value from that directly? Like if you're not running your own sequencer anymore, then you're not capturing value unless you're like an ETH staker. So we'll have to see how that kind of ends up looking like in the end here. But yeah, great to see Taiko innovating on this design here. And you can go give their blog post a read and their Twitter thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Growthepie.xyz has a great Twitter thread covering all of their layer 2 analytics on their website. So I've obviously shown this website a bunch of times on the refill before, but if you were kind of confused about what they're actually, what is actually on the site and how to read it and kind of what sections to pay attention to, this thread covers that all for you. So I just wanted to give this thread a shout out, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But I have to say, Growthepie.xyz is still the #1 place that you should be going to check on all the different activity happening on the L2s. They have so many different metrics that they cover. It's actually crazy. You can see here all the metrics that they cover, right? Things like daily active addresses, fees paid by users, the amount the rollups are paying to L1, on-chain profit, so on and so forth. So yeah, you can go check out this thread for a full breakdown of that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I spoke a little bit about about part of this tweet before, but I put a tweet out over the weekend where I said two things that I strongly believe. 99% of people aren't going to interact with on-chain apps in the way that crypto natives do, and most computations do not need to be done on-chain and are far more effectively and efficiently done off-chain with a simple proof posted on-chain. I'll attack the first point first here. So you guys know my view on crypto usability generally and what the end state of people using crypto networks is going to look like. It really is just going to look like a completely abstracted away thing where they have an app on their phone or they're using one of their existing kind of like banks even or brokerage accounts or anything like that to tap into the on-chain world. And they're using a wallet on their phone like Coinbase wallet, for example, or Rainbow wallet or whatever wallet it is, right? To tap into all of this, and then it's completely abstracted away to the point where it's like a couple of clicks. There's no gas fees that they have to look at. There's no complexities around kind of like bridging or sourcing liquidity or anything like that. All of that is completely abstracted away, like completely. And I mean to the point, as I said, where it's a couple of clicks for people to do anything they want, and they don't even know that it's happening on chain. They don't even know what chain it's happening on because it's been all extracted away. So I don't want to spend too long on that point because you guys already know my view on that, and I think that it's not a view that is really hard to argue with at this point, because what us crypto natives do, the UX hoops that we jump through just to be able to use a lot of this stuff, I'm very much convinced that most people are never going to do that. Even though there's money to be made, they're still not going to do it, right? And that takes me to my second point, which is around doing computations off-chain. Now, I spoke about this before in the context of Bonsai Pay, about how they're doing kind of ZK co-processing, doing the things off-chain, but it also applies to things like what Chainlink is doing, for example. But I wasn't really talking about Chainlink here. I was more focused on the ZK co-processing and basically doing all of the computations on-chain instead of doing them on-chain. And then that ultimately brings us back to the original value prop of a blockchain. I am strongly believe that the only value prop of a blockchain is to be a settlement layer, really. I don't believe that the value prop of having a blockchain be a computational layer is actually something that is long-term sustainable. And in me saying that, another way to think about it is the monolithic L1 architecture versus the modular architecture. The monolithic architecture is the one that puts heavy emphasis on doing computations on chain, right? Like, for example, Solana wants everything to happen on layer 1, all of the computations to happen on layer 1, and that's a fine design to pursue if you want to pursue that, but I don't think that's long-term sustainable for a number of different reasons. Whereas the modular design says, okay, why don't we keep like the minimum amount of stuff that we need to keep on the layer 1, which is the layer that's replicated across thousands of nodes and validators and all these different entities across the world. And then we basically scale in layers where essentially we can have the guarantees that these layers are doing what they're saying they're doing, and posting that proof down to layer 1 as a settlement layer, and then be able to do all the computations off-chain. So essentially what you change it to is, yes, all the computations are done in a centralized way off-chain. There's no decentralization there, but it doesn't matter because by using things like ZK proofs, we can guarantee that the computation was actually done in a way that is not fraud, that is not done in a way that's going to rug users, that is not doing something that it shouldn't be doing. And that is the real key unlock here. That is really, to me, what brings the original value prop of blockchains back, which is a trustless settlement layer, which is basically a layer that you post a proof to that anyone in the world can verify themselves, anyone in the world can trust because it's based on cryptography, instead of trying to do all the computations on chain. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to be long-term sustainable. I've spoken about this before, not just kind of technical wise, but also from the economic perspective, just from the fact that if you can get the same security or guarantee guarantees and the same trustless guarantees of doing it on-chain versus off-chain, you would choose off-chain every time, because on-chain is always going to be more expensive from a number of different angles. It's always going to be slower. Like, I've been reading on the ZK provers lately. In their end state, they should be able to prove a ZK proof in 10 milliseconds, right? That is faster than anything in the world can be. Nothing in the world can be done that fast, because even Solana, which actually optimizes for this, they optimize for latency, they're limited by the speed of light, right? So for the whole network to come to consensus on this stuff, they get it down to 400 milliseconds. So they're limited by the speed of light, and obviously if they're trying to do it globally, they're limited by that, right? So when you're doing it in 10 milliseconds, you're not limited by the speed of light because you're doing it on one server, you're doing it on one computer, right? So you do it much faster. That is actually it's impossible to do it faster than that in a distributed network because of the laws of physics. Like, this is not up for debate. The laws of physics dictates that you obviously can't travel faster than the speed of light, and then throw in all the other things that have to be thrown in when it comes to latency across the internet, right? So when you look at it like that, then okay, well, if you can do a ZK proof in 10 milliseconds and then post that on chain, right? That is just vastly more efficient than doing it on chain, having to have it replicated across all these different nodes, having to have these nodes, be paid in some way to actually be up. And if it's a heavy node, it's going to cost more, right? Heavy validator, it's going to cost more. So yeah, I mean, you guys know my view on this. I am very, very bullish on the modular design, very, very bearish on the monolithic design. And I think we're going to see that play out, but it's going to take the long term for it to play out. I think that the ZK tech, as far along as it's come already, still got a long way to go, but we're already seeing the fruits of the labor. We already have ZK AVMs, guys. And yes, there are issues like centralization with these L2s and potential governance things and blah, blah, and whatever else. But I don't think that takes away from my point in that I believe that most computations do not need to be done on chain, and pretty much like all of them, and I would say the vast majority of them are not going to be done on chain going forward. You're simply just going to post the proof on chain. You're simply going to post everything you need to on chain in order to have the most trustless and secure computation be done off chain, and away you go. And users can trust that, businesses can trust that, entities can trust that, governments can trust that, and it's all there on the global settlement layer known as Ethereum, credibly neutral, decentralized, super secure, right? Because all that ETH stake is securing it, with punishments like slashing, because the rest of the proof of stake networks, I think, or at least the most popular ones, don't have slashing, so there's no punishments for doing anything wrong. And you have all those security guarantees in place there for Ethereum layer 1. But yeah, anyway, enough ranting about that. Moving on from that one. All right, so I came across this update from Brave. So Brave, the web browser, they basically put out that there is a new feature in the Brave wallet. They've added support for ERC 4361, which is Sign In With Ethereum. So you can sign messages more clearly and safe across the Ethereum ecosystem, and it replaces the fragmented Web2 logging experience with a single unified login credential secured by your crypto wallet. I love seeing this, guys. Like, the left here is just crap. Sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Apple, sign in with Twitter. Screw all that. Sign in with Ethereum. Let me sign in with my Ethereum address, right? Let me just sign a message with my private key, and away we go. And let me kind of do anything I can do on chain within your wallet, within your kind of, I guess, like software, whatever it is. That stuff, I love it. I love that it's called Sign In With Ethereum, because I think that there is a kind of, I guess, like, obviously big brand to Ethereum and a kind of big network effect there. Everyone has an Ethereum wallet. Getting an Ethereum wallet costs nothing. Signing in with Ethereum costs nothing, because there's no on-chain transaction. It's just signing a message, which you can do for free, obviously, because you're just signing it with your private key. Yeah, I mean, I am very much looking forward to more apps and software integrating this into their stack here, but great to see Brave do it there. All right, speaking of making things more seamless, Dan Romero announced that there's a new feature on Warpcast. So you can now mint from your feed, so mint an NFT from your feed on Farcacaster, on Warpcast, and own it on chain. So he says, yeah, mint an NFT on chain directly to a wallet you control, all without leaving your feed. No buying, bridging, app switching, or gas, just a few taps and get back to browsing. Now, this is what I'm talking about, guys, when I say we're going to get to the point where it's just 2 clicks to do anything. Watch this video, and I'll describe the video for those of you listening to the podcast. In the feed, clicks the mint button, mint using 300 warps, which is the Warpcaster currency, completed, done. That's it. That was like one, no, it's 2 clicks, literally 2 clicks. As I've been saying, guys, this is the future of on-chain for everyone. It's 1, 2, 3 clicks at most. That's the future. Not what we currently have. Definitely not what we currently have. And that's what we're going to get to in everything, not just Farcacaster. But I figured that was like a perfect way to kind of show you guys what it actually looks like in its end state here, because that's the future of crypto UX to me. All right, finally here, I just wanted to give a shout out to that podcast I did last week with Collective Shift. It went live yesterday, I believe. It was a really fun podcast to do, guys. I never do in-person interviews because I'm on the other side of the world to pretty much everyone that usually interviews me. But we did this in a recording studio. Then there's a video here, and it's in, I guess, like both video and podcast form. We covered not just ETH, but like everything crypto. We talked a fair bit about, like, I guess, markets and market cycles. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one, so definitely go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But I think that's going to be it for today, and I'm going to edit out those 2 coughs in the episode. You won't hear them, I'll edit them out, but I did cough a bit. I hate being sick. It's not COVID, funny enough. It's just like a weird cold, and it kind of like wiped me out a little bit for the past few days. But I'm back now, hopefully back tomorrow as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.